Mary Wivey again, coming back to you with a new post for our channel. Caitlin's here with me. Say hi, Caitlin.
Hi.
Just wanted to talk today about a couple of things, maybe a little bit more, but the first thing I wanted to talk about is how, I don't want to say detrimental, Caitlin, but I want to say something damaging. How damaging it is for family members to come right out and say they don't believe you have Tourette's. I think that because we've been through that with our own families, that it made my children more introverted and less social, because in the back of their mind they knew that the person that they were around didn't believe that they had Tourette's. Now, you know, you're going to have people in your life that are not going to believe you. And basically it's because they don't live with you every day, so they're not going to see how Tourette's affects your life like a parent would, or a roommate, or a sibling, you know, your sibling. So what happens is that you kind of have this urgent feeling to want to prove to them that you have Tourette's, and I don't know if that's something that you can really do. Like, we have freedom of choice, they have freedom of choice. If they choose not to believe that you have Tourette's, there's really nothing you can do about it, except just to not socialize with those people. I know that's a hard thing not to do, especially if it's family members or somebody that you love, but my family and I have chosen not to socialize with family members who have felt that way about my children, and it has been better for my kids not to have those people around. Because whether they just come right out and say it or not, you can still feel that undercurrent of unbelief, and it just makes you uncomfortable.
One thing that happens is sometimes they actively try to change you as a person, which is something that I myself had to avoid, especially in middle school, when a couple of my cousins were trying to make me into miniatures of them instead of letting me be me.
And that comes with them wanting to change you in all aspects. So they figure if they start with the outward appearance, they can help with the inward appearance. And they can't, because Tourette's is Tourette's, and if you have it, then you have it. No matter what the degree of severity, I mean, you're still going to have it. And, you know, there are times when you learn how to self-monitor when you're out in public, and that's I believe is a very preserving thing for your psyche and for your emotions, but it also makes it very difficult for you to be able to relax when you go out someplace. I know that when my children were in school and they held their tics in, which is called self-monitoring, they built up to a point that when they got home, it took them 2 hours to just settle down from ticking. And there's no way they could have done any homework in that time. So, you know, this whole thing of Tourette's is a very misunderstood disorder. I call it a disease. A disease is something that doesn't go away. There's no cure for it, and it can go into remission, but it can pop back up again. And that's what Tourette's is. It can slow down. The tics can slow down to the point where you don't have hardly any. You can get to the point where you feel comfortable around people and you feel relaxed, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're there again, and they're maybe even twice as bad as they were before, and it's kind of a shock to your system to think, well, hey, you know, this has started up again, so I guess it's, you know, not going to ever go away. Some people are blessed with the fact that they don't have Tourette's all their lives, and then I'm happy for them. But then there are other people who are what we call extreme cases, who have Tourette's all their lives, and sometimes it gets to the point where it's so severe they have to have deep brain stimulation surgery, and usually that helps stop the tics. It blocks the signal that your brain is sending to your muscles to tick. But let's get back to not having people that don't believe you have Tourette's. I had a sibling tell me that I caused my two youngest children, Caitlin and Caleb, to have Tourette's because I spent way too much time and paid too much attention to my two older boys who have Tourette's.
According to him, you spent too much time.
Yes. Well, see, this person didn't live with us, so they didn't know what our family dynamic was like, so they just assumed. And you know what happens when you assume, that you make an ass out of you and me. But it's not something that you can wish away. It's very hard for the child with Tourette's and for the parent of that child to feel like they have support when you have somebody accusing you of causing someone to have Tourette's. Now, genetically we know that that's not possible because it has to be a genetic disposition for it. And my children were because of my ex-husband. He had Tourette's.
And his brother.
And his brother. And they have, 99.9% male predominant, and only in the most extreme cases do girls get it. And I know those numbers have changed, those facts have changed a little bit. They're finding that more and more women or girls are becoming diagnosed with Tourette's, even if they don't have a brother with it. So, but when my oldest son was diagnosed, there was no information out there except medical journals.
Sadly.
And so I had to kind of just do a lot of observation with my son. And if someone doesn't believe you have Tourette's, then I wouldn't waste breath on them, because you're not ever going to convince them that you do. And they may say, "Oh no, I believe you," but deep down in their hearts, they're looking for that moment when they can say, "Oh look, see, you didn't tick, you don't have Tourette's," or "See, we went out all afternoon and you didn't tick once." And see, those kinds of people aren't listening to you. They're not caring to listen to you. It's kind of like when you up somebody and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Then you walk away. I mean, if you're really interested in how a person's doing, then you're going to stand there and let that person tell you how they're doing. And it takes commitment, it takes effort, and it takes a desire to want to help people when you say, "How are you doing?" So, again, you'll never change that person's mind that you have Tourette's, and it's better for you to not be around them so that you can find peace with the fact that this is what you have, and learn how to navigate it through your life, not to the point where you're in denial, but to the point where you can, tell when something's going to happen, like a new tick is going to start, or that's called waxing and waning. So let's talk about that for a minute. So waxing and waning is when you start to wax with a new tick, you get irritable, you don't eat well, and you don't sleep well. And so it takes a good week of those kinds of things going on, before the tick will show itself. And then the tick will start slowly, 1 or 2 repetitions every a few minutes, sometimes every half hour. This is what would happen to my children when they were younger. And then as the weeks progressed, the tick would become more dominant, and it would also just be more consistent, and it would start to show itself more and more. And then it would reach an apex where it was just all the time, non-stop. And then a few days of that, then they would start slowing down and getting to the point where the person who was ticking in the waxing and waning movement would start to eat better, they'd start to sleep better, they weren't as irritable as they were before, and they could relax. And when that started happening, it was a sign that the tick was starting to wane, which was mean it started to stop. And basically that kind of a pattern happened a lot with my children. So I was able to tell when they started getting irritable. Say, for instance, the day before they were all happy and laughing and everything, and then they wake up the next day and they're like a grouchy bear, and for really no apparent reason, and they don't eat well, and they were, starting to stay up late at night. That's when I knew something was going to show itself, and 9 times out of 10, it did. So That's what waxing and waning is. It helps you to understand the cycles of your Tourette's when you first get diagnosed, when you first have it. Caitlin waxes and wanes now as an adult, and she has moments where she's very emotional, or she doesn't sleep well, or she's not hungry, and then she'll start to do her shoulder tics or her thumb tick, and that starts to build up and build up and build up to the point where once it's apexed, she's more relaxed. Even though she's ticking, she's not as irritable, she's sleeping better, and then it starts to wane. But I found out with adults, it lasts a little bit longer than it does with children when they're ticking and waxing and waning. So I hope you understand that. If you don't, please, on the page, list a question or a statement or something that you want to contribute to this talk. And so what do you think we should cover now, Caitlin? Do you have any thoughts while I was talking?
Oh, maybe just reference that when you wax and wane and your tick is something new, it may or may not stick around. You can't really...
So you mean it may not become a tick that you do all the time?
It might not become a permanent fixture, so to speak.
Okay, well that's a good point. I didn't think of that. That's a really good point. It's true. There was some ticks that Matthew did when he was younger that he doesn't do anymore. And for that I'm thankful. He did one tick where he shook his head constantly or turned it just to one side, and he got really, really tired of it because it got to the point where he couldn't watch anything, he couldn't play games, he couldn't even read a book or play with his toys. So one night he got crying, he asked me, he said, "Mama, would you please ask Jesus to stop this tick?" And so we prayed, and then when I went to bed I prayed some more, and when he got up the next morning it was gone. And that was a definite faith booster for both of us. And that's a good point to bring out too, is that you're not alone in this. I know you may feel like alone, you may have people around you that don't believe you, but find somebody who will listen to you. There are support groups. If you look online, go to the library if you don't have a computer. Look online. Look for neurologists who specialize in Tourette's. Look for support groups in the town that you live in. And if they don't have a support group, then maybe you could start one. Because there are people out there with Tourette's who are afraid to come out into the public and say, "I have Tourette's," because Tourette's has such a bum rap all these years. I mean, it's been known as the swearing disease, and that's just such a small part of it, the coprolalia, and it's something that people, they say, they can stop swearing if they want to. It's like, no, they can't. What happens is they get obsessed about a word, whether the word be gumdrop or shit or whatever, and they start obsessing about it, and it just comes out from their vocal tics, and it just clicks, and it stays with them. At least that's how I've seen it happen with my children. There could be a better scientific reason.
There is a scientific reason.
Well then, enlighten us, Caitlin.
So within your brain, next to the language center, is a part of your brain called the basal ganglia, and it kind of acts like... That's Maggie, the dog. She's with us. The basal ganglia acts almost like a filter system. Imagine a bottle with a very narrow neck. So normally, inappropriate impulses, your brain realizes that those are not allowed, quote unquote, in society, and can filter those out. But they're discovering recently that a person with Tourette's has an abnormally shaped basal ganglia, so that neck is wider. So we can't always stop those things that happen. The impulses just get out, and there's no way for the brain to filter it and make it stop.
I do have to say that Caleb has found a humorous way when he's downstairs with us to allow his coprolalia to come out, because he takes cuss words and he uses different words, and you never know what's going to come out of Caleb's mouth.
He is the most creative non-swearer ever.
It's so funny. But when he's alone, he lets it loose, which, I remember when he was just a little guy. He was like 4 years old, and we got home from his nursery school one day, it was before I was picking up the other kids, and he sat on the couch, and he was crying really, really hard. And I turned around, I looked around at him, around the corner from the kitchen, I said, Caleb, what's the matter, honey? And I went over and I sat down beside him, and he said, Mama, does God hate me because I swear? I went, of course not. He doesn't hate you. Caleb, he understands exactly what's going on with you. And he knows what you have to deal with, and he doesn't hold this against you. And he loves you very, very much. So, you know, people who say that you don't have Tourette's have no compassion. They have no understanding. They don't want to take the time to learn what it's about, how it affects your life.
They would rather remain ignorant.
And that takes, you know, I believe it takes more energy to stay ignorant than it does to be informed. They don't want to spend the time, make the effort, and that's sad for them because they're losing out on knowing very, very wonderful people just because they have Tourette's. It's, you know, you can't accept somebody for who they are as far as their Tourette's goes and make them feel comfortable around you. You know, for you who are listening that don't have Tourette's or know somebody that has Tourette's and don't know how to approach them, don't be afraid to approach them and say, hey, do you have Tourette's? And if they say yes, then sit down and have a conversation with them about it. Let them explain to you what it does to their lives, because I can guarantee you it's going to help them feel better as much as it's going to enlighten your knowledge about Tourette's. Because they need somebody to talk to. My children do. I don't know how many talks we used to have all the time about their Tourette's. But there's going to come a point where you're going to say, you know what? I don't care if anybody believes me or not. This is who I am. This is what I have. And this is what I'm dealing with. If you don't like it, then don't come near me. Because that's what my children did. They got to that point when they were through teenage years and almost into young adult years. They just said, I don't care. I don't care anymore if you think I have it or not. Because this is who I am. This is what I have to deal with. And if you can't deal with it, then stay away from me. So I know that seems kind of harsh, but sometimes you have to say the harsh things to protect you, to make sure that you're not being beaten down by somebody else's unbelief. Well, I also wanted to talk about animals. We have some really cool dogs and cats. And what's really interesting is that when my children or I'm upset or crying or sad or just having a bad day, animals have a sixth sense about that stuff, and they get really, really close to you, and they want to help you and all they can. And Maggie, come see Mama. Come on. Come on. This is my Maggie. See? Isn't she pretty? She's a very, very, very sensitive, loving dog who, when I cry, will will sit up beside me and hug me. And how she hugs me is she puts her head right here. And she sticks her nose up here and just pushes herself against me and lets me know that she's there. And, yes, I know. You gotta wait a minute. Caitlin's dog, Lilac, will curl up into a ball beside Caitlin and just put her chin on her knee or her leg and just,
I know, it's terrible.
What do you want? She'll comfort her, Lilac. Really. She's very talkative, Maggie is. So anyway, if you have any questions about this subjects that we talked about today, about waxing and waning, or people who don't believe that you have Tourette's, or if you just want to, vent on the channel page.
The comments.
Comments, yeah. Just vent out to how you're feeling and to how unfair life is and how much you hate the way that you have to deal with this. And you know what? It's not anything I haven't heard before. My children used to get so angry with Tourette's. Caleb says if OCD was a person, he'd bitch slap it. So, having 4 children with Tourette's has kind of really opened my eyes to a lot of things about life. And I just want you to know that we're here for you. And we're going to do what we can to help you feel better. And if I don't, like I said, if I don't have the answer, I don't know, then I'll look it up for you. But I just don't want you to feel like you're alone out there. And the parents, I want you to understand how important it is to let go of the image of what you thought your child was going to be when they were diagnosed, and accept who they are right now and help them find their strengths and their weaknesses. But basically their strengths. Let them know that you see them trying, you see them working hard. You know, with the right positive support, your children can become doctors, they can become teachers, they can become anything, writers, actors, directors, whatever it is that they dream of being, they can still be that. Tourette's is just something that you have. It's not who you are. So don't feel like you are Tourette's, because you're not. And I hope you join us again next time.